Of all the skills our children learn as they grow, reading and comprehension may be the most important. Consider that children must understand what they read to be able to master other skills, mathematics, science, and history, among others. It can be discouraging then to see the levels at which our children are reading today. According to the Annie Casey Foundation, in Michigan, 70% of all children starting the 4th grade are not at proficient levels of reading. 85% of poor children, as identified by free and reduced lunch status, are not proficient readers. These numbers predict very serious outcomes, not only for the child, but for the families and communities in which they live. Bob Sornson is the founder of the Early Learning Foundation. He created an initiative to help educators help these children.
The whole idea of early learning success is that we're not going to wait until problems are large and more difficult to solve. And this reflects the general attitude that's out there in the world today, that in many cases we give a lot more effort to helping kids when they are in high school and we're afraid that they're getting ready to drop out of school than we do up front in a preventative manner. The National Research Council says if you don't have significant skills in reading by the end of 3rd grade, you are very likely going to drop out of school and not be a high school graduate. So this pattern of success or lack of success that you develop in the early years has incredible long-term implications, not just on middle school and high school and graduation, but it really has implications for whether you will be a successful learner for the rest of your life.
Dr. Sornson started out as a high school teacher in northern Michigan. It was after watching student after student come to him with severely deficient reading skills that he decided to formulate his Early Learning Success Initiative. It wasn't until he moved to Northville, Michigan, an affluent Detroit suburb, that he was able to implement his ideas.
In Northville, we began just with the discussion. Why do we wait until kids have an identified deficit before we give them significant help? And when we began the discussion and talked about how to systematically provide services in a different way, quicker and more responsively, they jumped on board. And after a couple of years, they had made such incredible improvements that the school board one day gave me a little talking to, and they said, Bob, this is working so well in this school, why aren't you doing it at all the other schools? And so we quickly moved to a full district implementation. And we took the Northville special ed rates from about state average down to about 5.3%, which compares right now to about a 14.4% state special ed identification average in the state of Michigan.
The success of Dr. Sornson's initiative was obvious, and it wasn't long before he had another school system that needed his help.
Dr. Sornson has had quite a reputation in our area, and it just so happened that our former superintendent was at the wrong meeting at the right time and sat in a meeting, and he was talking about the Early Learning Success Initiative, and at that time the assistant superintendent from Wayne County RESA was looking for a school that would be able to, that would like to take on this project.
At Bulman, we had a very high rate of failure, and we had relatively poor test scores across the board back about 5 years ago. In fact, specifically, if I were to look back 5 years ago, we would see that 15.3% of their children in that school were identified as needing special education services. They were identified as handicapped kids.
We would get students and we knew that they couldn't do the work, and we just didn't know where to go from there. And we would do a special ed referral, and response might be, well, they're not special ed yet.
It was in this atmosphere that Dr. Sornson would implement his Early Learning Success Initiative.
Some of the things that we've put in place are things that weren't even on our radar before as classroom teachers or literacy specialists. Early motor skills, and we know that children aren't playing outside as much as they used to, so they're not building those motor skills, and they are not building those balance skills, and those are things that have to be in place before literacy skills can come about. So when we find somebody struggling with early literacy skills, we look at their motor skills and see, do we need to do some intervening here?
Intervention is often necessary when kids are at risk. But once children are identified, early learning can proceed. In the case of Bulman Elementary, Staff, along with Sornson, developed 3 components to the early learning model.
One is an absolutely safe and connected environment, a place where kids can come and know that they are emotionally safe, where teachers will take the time to teach them how to behave appropriately, where they won't feel threatened by other kids or by angry teachers. This has to be a safe learning environment, and they've developed a beautiful culture in that school. The second thing that they developed was an instructional support team, and this is a group of professionals that are already there in the building. They didn't have to spend money to hire new people, but we took a little bit of time from several of the people in the building, including their reading specialist, their special ed teacher, their social worker, their principal, gave some time to this process and were available when teachers asked for help. So a specific process was developed for their support team to help teachers as quickly as possible. And last but not least, we've developed a variety of assessment tools that help classroom teachers keep track of the most important learning outcomes and behavior outcomes that young kids should be experiencing.
And one of the things that we've implemented over the past 2 years is a literacy rotation for 2nd and 3rd grade struggling readers. We pull them out of their classrooms for about 30 minutes in the afternoon after they've already had reading instruction in their classroom at their level. We pull them out for a half hour to get another lesson at their level, so they're being double dipped, and we're finding that because they're getting 2 reading lessons at their level every day, that they're accelerating faster. So those children who were behind, many of them are catching up and are at grade level.
At first we do the children read a story that they have read previously. While they're doing that, sometimes they take a running record, which is I'll pull a child to the side and I listen to them read and I kind of score how they do. Then after that, you have working with words, which was what we were doing with the trays and the magnetic letters. After that, we have a writing component where the children have a writing journal and they usually write about the story that they've read. And then we have a new book introduction where we take a picture walk through the book, we pinpoint specific vocabulary that might be tricky for the child, and then choral read through the story.
So are the results measurable? When Bulman started using the initiative 5 years ago, 15.3% of students there were identified as having a learning disability.
Over the years, it has gone consistently down. In this past year, during the 2009-10 school year, they are all the way down to 8.3% of those kids now being identified.
This is absolutely the best program that we've ever had. You know, as I'm a former teacher, and I always knew that there were kids that I wasn't able to reach, and I didn't know what to do about that. And so you'd go from one in-service to another to find out what you could do. And this model, we've seen such measurable results.
It's wonderful when you're reading a book with a child who is considered a struggling reader and they stop in the middle of reading and say, "This is a really good book."
The staff at Bulman also has some recommendations for parents who want to work on their own with their kids.
Well, absolutely, begin at home. Taking your child out from in front of the TV, playing with them, encouraging your child to cut, paste, draw, play with Legos, Lincoln Logs, anything that's going to build those fine motor skills, as well as just outdoor play, building large motor skills as well. Also, we're finding a lot of kids come to us with language deficits. So it is so important to talk to your kids and engage them in conversation, read to them to build their vocabulary, play games like I'm going on a picnic, I'm going to bring, and each time you add an item and repeat the sentence, so that's building memory skills as well as language.
Okay.
And how can schools across the country get involved with Dr. Sornson?
First thing that I would recommend is they go to earlylearningfoundation.com, where there are all kinds of reports and other information sources and different places that there are different websites that you can connect to that will give you a world of information about how you can begin an early learning project of your own. You might want to read the book that I wrote back in 2001 called Preventing Early Learning Failure. But more importantly, you might want to either contact Bulman for information about their story or contact me at the Early Learning Foundation.
If you think your child has a learning disability or to find out more about the methods shown in this story, please check out the website shown on your screen.